Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. Monday Night Raw tonight was from the Videotron Centre in Quebec City, Canada, and the show just ended. And Monday Night Raw tonight, I thought it was a decent show, in my opinion. Tonight, we had Dominik Mysterio and El Grande Americano. They have taken on AJ Styles and Dragon Lee. We had SAMI ZAYN versus Rusev. Roxanne Perez ended up taking on Iyo Sky. And this was really supposed to be Iyo versus Naomi for the Women's World Championship. But obviously news came out earlier in the day that Naomi was not cleared to compete. We had the Women's Intercontinental Championship on the line where Becky Lynch defended the title against MAXXINE Duprri. Why did this take place? After Becky Lynch ended up saying it last week, I'm like, really? And then we had CM Punk and LA Knight versus Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed in the main event of the show. And of course, Monday Night Raw ends the same way every single week, where it has to deal with the Vision, with Seth Rollins, Bron Breakker, and Bronson Reed. It's like we're living Groundhog Day, when it comes to the end of Monday Night Raw every week. It just ends the same way. But overall, Monday Night Raw, decent show it was tonight. But anyway, let's jump right into the review. Monday Night Raw opened up tonight with CM Punk. CM Punk came out, big ovation that he got there in Quebec City from the crowd. Punk made his way down to the ring. Punk got into the ring. He got on the mic. He kept saying, "Is it great to be alive on a Monday night in Quebec City or what?" Punk kept saying that they make it hard for him to stay angry. But then he thinks about how he should be the World Heavyweight Champion right now. So Punk kept saying that he should be here representing this company and the people as the champion. But he's not. He kept going to say that he's a little bit angry about it, and that he has a Seth Rollins problem. He kept saying the self-professed visionary who can't see what's right in front of his face. He kept saying that Rollins is trying his best to be him, to be Punk, and that Rollins is failing miserably. Punk then wanted to say that he climbed to the top of the mountain for the first time in 12 years and became champion at SummerSlam. But we all know Rollins cashed in and he won the championship. So Punk appreciated the fans cheering and, their chants for his name. He kept saying that he can't help but feel that he let the fans down because he's not a champion. He kept saying that if they thought before that he was relentless in pursuing his goals and getting that title, he's even more possessed to regain the title. Punk kept saying that they say to hate the player and not the game, and that he has cashed in a few times, but he hates the player. He kept saying that Rollins is pretending to be him and pretended to be injured, so everyone had their guard down. He kept saying that Rollins cashed in, and that the next time him and Rollins fight, he's going to take the title. He kept saying that Rollins won't have to pretend to be injured because he's going to break Rollins' legs. So this led to LA Knight end up coming out. LA Knight, big pop there. So he got into the ring. He stared at Punk. Knight then extended his hand to Punk. Punk shook Knight's hand, and he ended up talking to Knight. Punk then ended up asking Knight if he has something to say. So Knight ended up telling Punk, oh, well, I always have something to say. So let me talk to you. So Knight ended up saying that everyone knows Punk was robbed at SummerSlam. And that he climbed the mountain and rose to the occasion by beating Gunther and winning the World Heavyweight Championship. He ended up saying that Punk deserves to have his rematch. So Punk was like, yeah. So then Knight ended up saying, but last week, I'm having my match. It has nothing to do with you. I'm having my match with Seth Rollins. And what do? You come down. You can't contain yourself. So Knight ended up saying that Punk cost him his opportunity. So Knight ended up saying that he understands, but it was the wrong place and time. He ended up going to say that he doesn't have a problem with Punk. And he ended up saying that if Punk wants Seth Rollins, he should whip his ass. But he should do it on his time. He ended up saying that Punk should have his rematch after Knight gets his. So Punk ended up saying that he thinks he sees Knight's perspective. But the words he's looking for are, thank you, Mr. Punk, for preventing Seth Rollins from ending my career. So then Punk ended up asking if Knight thought he'd become the World Heavyweight Champion after Rollins stomped his head into the concrete. Punk ended up saying that he saved Knight's career. Punk ended up saying to Knight that he's a former World Heavyweight Champion and not Knight. And Punk ended up saying that he should be in the front. And he ended up saying that Knight needs to go to the back of the line. Knight then ended up telling Punk that when he thinks about what he did, thank doesn't come before you. He ended up saying that Punk did something special after 12 years and that he was overdue. So Punk ended up saying that as good as he is, he's not on Knight's level. So Knight ended up saying that he wants them to stay out of each other's way and that he will do Punk 2 favors. Knight ended up telling Punk that he will forget last week happened as long as Punk stays on his side of the line. Knight ended up saying that he will beat Seth Rollins and become the World Heavyweight Champion. And that Punk can be his first successful title defense. Yeah! So Punk ended up saying that in the spirit of making sure there's no bad blood between them, Punk ended up saying that he reminds Knight that he's the best in the world. So then this brought out Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman came out to the stage with Bronson Reed, who stole another one of Roman Reigns' shoes last week. So now he's carrying 2 pairs of shoes that he stole from Roman Reigns. And also Braun Breaker came out. Heyman started to speak French. Heyman ended up saying that he only knows what he needs to speak to get out of this province, speaking their gutturally language. So Heyman ended up saying, speaking of guttural language, LA Knight, take it from the adorable Oracle. Do not get into the favor business with CM Punk. Heyman said, if you start trading favors with him, it will cost him everything in life. And that it will cost you your self-respect, your position in the company, and half your career, years of your life, and your tribal chief. So Punk called Paul Heyman a crybaby, and he ended up saying someone is getting punched in the face tonight. Punk then invited Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker to come down to the ring. Heyman ended up saying that he did teach Punk correctly after all these years. And that's a great idea. And that they'll do it tonight. He ended up saying that CM Punk and LA Knight versus the future of WrestleMania, Braun Breaker, and the owner of the Shula Fala in Bronson Reed. The Shula Fala. That sounds awful. So Punk and Knight looked at each other. Knight ended up saying that they don't want those two goofs. So Punk cut Knight off, and he accepted the challenge. Knight ended up saying that Punk doesn't speak for him. So Knight ended up accepting the challenge as well. So the match was made official. LA Knight and CM Punk teamed up to take on Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker later on, which was the main event of the show tonight. So Punk and Knight, they did the whole can they coexist with them. So Paul Heyman ended up saying, deal, see you tonight. Braun Breaker then started heading down to the ring. Bronson Reed and Paul Heyman ended up pulling Braun Breaker back. So Breaker was shouting about both Punk and Knight's ages. You know, he kept saying to Punk, oh, you're 47 years old. And he kept saying, oh, you're over 100 years old combined. So pretty much that was basically that. But overall, I thought this was a good opening to Monday Night Raw here. CM Punk still focusing on Seth Rollins, and he wants to face him and take back the World Heavyweight Championship that he lost in like 5 seconds to Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. But then, you know, you have LA Knight get in the way, which they are possibly teasing, you know, something with CM Punk and LA Knight. So I think that's where they're going to head. You know, we get a Punk and LA Knight feuds sometime down the line here. But overall, good opening segment here. And then we went to the Judgment Day Clubhouse. We saw Finn Balor. Balor was talking with Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez. Also, JD McDonough was also there. Dominik Mysterio walked in. And El Grande Americano was with him. So, Roxanne Perez, Raquel Rodriguez, Finn Balor, JD McDonough, they weren't happy that El Grande Americano was with them. So Balor ended up saying that he wants to speak privately with Dominik. Dominik ended up telling Balor that he's the king of the luchadors and will use El Grande Americano to his advantage. Balor ended up saying that he hopes Dominik will bring back the AAA Mega Championship. So Dominik ended up telling Balor to trust Daddy Dom. So then Dominik walked off with El Grande Americano, and that was basically that. So AAA Triple Mania is this Saturday. You know, maybe I'll check it out. That's, you know, hopefully. But, you know, the card looks pretty good. We have El Hijo del Vikingo versus Dominik Mysterio versus Dragon Lee versus El Grande Americano. That's a 4-way for the AAA Mega Championship. We have Balor, McDonough, and Raquel Rodriguez versus Mr. Iguana, Nino Hamburgerasa, and Lola Vice in a mixed trios match. So that should be pretty cool. You know, get to see Mr. Iguana and his, you know, iguana. So, you know, Mr. Iguana is over with the crowd there. Then we have Los Garza. That's Berto and Angel versus Pagano and Psycho Clown. Street fight for the AAA World Tag Team Championship. That should be pretty cool to check out. Then we have El Mesias versus El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr. For the AAA Latin American Championship. And then we have Flamer versus Fabi Apache versus Natalia. 3-way match for the AAA Reina de Reinas Championship. So the card looks pretty decent here. So, maybe I'll check it out on Saturday. We'll see. So then we had AJ Styles and Dragon Lee versus El Grande Americano and Dominik Mysterio. Tag team match to start off the first match of the night. And this was a decent match here. As I say, the wrestling here in the matches tonight were pretty decent here. So before the bell even rang, Dragon Lee ended up hitting El Grande Americano with a suicide dive as El Grande Americano and Dominik ended up making their entrance. Styles then kicked Dominik in the head, and he rolled Dominik into the ring. So that's when the ref rang the bell. The match got underway. Styles bounced Dominik in the corner a few times. The crowd there was behind Dominik. Like what we chanted last week, dirty, dirty Dom, dirty, dirty Dom. So that's what the crowd was doing here. So Styles ended up hitting Dom with a backbreaker. He then tagged in Dragon Lee. Dragon Lee came off the top rope with a double axe handle to Dominik's arm. Dragon Lee ended up wrenching Dominik's arm, and he ended up snapping it. Dragon Lee sent Dominik into the ropes. Dominik then slid under the bottom rope. Dominik got in the ring, and he tagged in El Grande Americano in Ludwig Kaiser. So El Grande Americano ended up sending Dragon Lee into the corner. He blocked the kick from Dragon Lee. So Americano ended up shouting at Dragon Lee, and he chopped his chest. Americano ended up charging at Dragon Lee. Dragon Lee then sidestepped. Americano then dropped Dragon Lee on the apron, but Dragon Lee ended up shouldering El Grande Americano back, and he bounced him off of the corner. Dragon Lee then ended up hitting a flying crossbody block. He ended up going for the cover, and Americano kicked out. Styles then tagged back in. Both Styles and Dragon Lee ended up sending Americano into the ropes. Styles and Dragon Lee ended up hitting a double team back elbow, and they delivered some kicks to Americano. So Dominik ran in. Styles ended up slinging Dominik into Dragon Lee, and we had Dragon Lee ended up hitting a powerbomb, which looked kind of weak in my opinion. So Dominik and Americano end up regrouping at ringside. And so Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had Dominik and Styles end up going at it. Dominik ended up taking Styles down. Dominik ended up sending Styles into the ropes. So Dominik then lowered his head, and he ate a kick from Styles, to which then Styles delivered the Pele kick to Dominik. So then Dragon Lee and Americano ended up tagging in. They end up going at it at this point in the match. Dragon Lee ducked a pair of clotheslines from Americano, and he ended up hitting a running hurricanrana to Americano. Dragon Lee then clotheslined Americano, and he ended up sending him into the ropes for a back body drop. But Americano ended up going for a sunset flip. Dragon Lee then stopped from Americano delivering a sunset flip, and he ended up double stomping Americano's chest. And you had later on where the ref tried to hold El Grande Americano back, and Dominik used the distraction to send Dragon Lee into the ropes. We had Americano end up putting Dragon Lee in the ring, and he tied Dragon Lee's tail of his mask to the bottom turnbuckle. Dominik then put a mask on. He put a luchador mask on him. And he ended up punching Dragon Lee in the ribs. Dominik then started clubbing Dragon Lee's chest, and he applied a rear chin lock. Dragon Lee fought back, but Dominik ended up punching him back, and he ended up putting him on the top rope. Dominik then climbed to the top rope. He was ripping at Dragon Lee's mask. Dominik then pulled Dragon Lee off the ropes, and he delivered a running corner drop kick to Dragon Lee. Dominik then took off the mask, and he started taunting the crowd. So then Monday Night Raw went to another commercial. Then, as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Americano ended up attacking Dragon Lee on the top rope. Dragon Lee ended up knocking Americano down. So Americano ended up pulling himself up on the ropes. Dragon Lee then ended up crushing Americano with a double stomp to his chest. Dragon Lee then crawled to the corner, but Dominik ended up pulling Styles off the apron because Dragon Lee was going to make the tag to Styles. So Styles then chased Dominik around ringside, and he ended up knocking Dominik and a cameraman into the timekeeper's area. So Dragon Lee then ended up pinning Americano with a German suplex, which was followed by a super kick to Americano. So Styles ended up finally tagging in. Styles came in and he had pinned Americano with a strike combo. Styles then followed up with a basement forearm to Americano. Styles then avalanched Americano in the corner. He then ended up hitting the Ushigoroshi to Americano. Styles ended up going for the cover, to which Dominik ended up breaking up the pin. Then you had later Americano end up grabbing the metal plate from his tights. But before Americano could put the metal plate under his mask, Styles stunned Americano with a kick. Dominik then grabbed the metal plate. He put his mask back on, and he put the metal plate underneath. So this led to Styles rolling Americano up, but Americano kicked out. And Americano's kick out to Styles ended up sending Styles into Dominik. Dominik then headbutted Styles with that metal plate, that loaded mask with the metal plate in there. So because of that, Americano ended up going for the cover. And there you go. El Grande Americano and Dominik Mysterio ended up winning the match. Overall, this was a decent tag team match here. And then we had a video that was done earlier in the day where we saw Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn came up to Adam Pearce and he asked Adam Pearce for a chance at the World Heavyweight Championship at Clash in Paris. Pearce ended up telling Sami Zayn that they should get through tonight with Rusev, and then they will talk about it. So Sheamus then walked in. Pearce ended up saying that he doesn't want any more madness with Rusev from Sheamus. So Sami Zayn ended up saying that tonight's match matters to him. And Sami ended up asking Sheamus, as a friend, not to get involved in the match. So Sheamus gave Sami Zayn his word, but Sheamus ended up telling Sami, the second the match is over, that Bulgarian bastard is his. So pretty much that was basically that. And then as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we saw Adam Pearce. He was with Iyo Sky as Iyo was complaining to Pearce about not getting her title match against Naomi for the Women's World Championship because it was announced earlier that Naomi was not cleared to compete. So Pearce ended up telling Iyo that she'll get the match once he knows more. So Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez walked up to Iyo, and both Roxanne and Raquel made fun of Iyo by not getting her match for the Women's World Championship against Naomi. So Roxanne ended up saying that she's lucky. She doesn't have to lose to Naomi again. So Iyo was like to Roxanne, how about we have a match tonight? So Adam Pearce made the match official. So we saw that later on. And then we had Sami Zayn. He ended up taking on Rusev. And this was, okay here. So the match got underway. And this is the first time that Sami Zayn and Rusev have fought in 8 years. So the crowd was into Sami, of course, because Sami is Canadian. So Rusev started taunting the crowd. The crowd did not cheer for Rusev. Sami Zayn got up on the turnbuckle and he fired everybody up, to which they ended up popping for Sami. Sami then ended up going after Rusev, but Rusev ended up punching Sami down. Rusev then dropped the elbow and started stomping away at Sami's chest. Rusev ended up hitting some shoulder thrusts in the corner to Sami. Sami then ducked the club from Rusev and he chopped at Rusev's chest. He started punching away at Rusev in the corner. Rusev ended up reversing the whip and he ended up delivering a back elbow to Sami. He ended up going for the cover, to which Sami kicked out. Rusev then ended up kicking Sami. He hit the ropes, but Sami ended up elbowing Rusev and he ended up booting Rusev back. Sami then knocked Rusev out of the ring and he ended up kicking him back. He then ended up hitting a Arabian press to the floor to Rusev. Sami then got Rusev into the ring and he ended up ducking two clotheslines from Rusev. But Rusev caught Sami and he ended up hitting a swinging side slam to Sami. So then, as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Rusev was in control of the match. He started punching Sami on the top rope. Rusev was sent up for a superplex, but Sami blocked that. Sami then started punching Rusev down to the canvas. Rusev then charged, but Sami ended up jumping over Rusev and he avoided an avalanche from him. Sami then grabbed Rusev's arm. He ended up chopping at Rusev's chest and he climbed the ropes and he delivered a springboard tornado DDT to Rusev. Sami then ended up standing up for the Huluva kick, but Sami then ran into a Machka kick from Rusev. Rusev ended up going for the cover, and Sami ended up kicking out. You had Rusev delivering Sheamus's 10 beats of the Botterin, send a message to Sheamus. So the match ended in a no contest because the MFTs, Tonga Loa, Jason Mateo, Tala Tonga, and Sol Sikoa ended up coming out. Tonga Loa and Jason Mateo pulled Sami Zayn out of the ring. Jason Mateo and Tonga Loa end up attacking Sami Zayn. He ended up holding Sami Zayn up for Tonga Loa to boot Sami down. Officials end up coming out. They end up sending the MFTs to the back. And pretty much after that, Rusev slowly got up at ringside. He was then laid out by a bro kick from Sheamus. Sheamus then put Rusev in the ring. Security ended up running out. Sheamus started beating up the security. Rusev then attacked Sheamus and sent him into the crowd. This led to both Rusev and Sheamus brawling into the crowd. Rusev then ripped Sheamus' shirt off. So referees ended up chasing after both of them as both Sheamus and Rusev fought their way to the back. So pretty much that was basically that. But I'm like, why are the MFTs here? Why is Tonga Loa, Jason Mateo, Tala Tonga, and Sol Sikoa here? They're SmackDown guys. And this is Monday Night Raw. It's like, once again, WWE, they love to insult their fans' intelligence. Same thing like what they did to Sami Zayn on Friday. They had Sami Zayn show up on SmackDown when he's a Raw guy. It's like they're insulting our intelligence here. So then, as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Adam Pearce ended up kicking Sol Sikoa and the MFTs out of the arena because he was on the phone with SmackDown General Manager Nick Aldis. So you had Danny Amphibio, who is the referee. He cut Adam Pearce off. He ended up telling Adam Pearce that they separated Rusev and Sheamus. But Pearce didn't believe him because he was furious about the MFTs being there. So Grayson Waller and the New Day then came up to Adam Pearce. Xavier Woods ended up complaining about his hat, which was a $12,000 hat, according to him, that was destroyed by Penta. Yeah, that hat that Xavier Woods wore last week, just seeing that live, it was an eyesore. An absolute eyesore at ringside. I'm surprised none of the fans that were sitting, floor, that were on the side where New Day was standing by the commentary table, they didn't say, we can't see, we can't see. I'm surprised they didn't chant that last week. So Pearce ended up saying that Penta will face Xavier Woods next week. He ended up saying that so Woods can get even for his sombrero, as what Pearce ended up calling it. So Pearce ended up saying that he's got business to attend to. And he ended up walking off. And pretty much that was basically that. Then we had a promo from Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed was wearing his Shulafala of the 2 pairs of sneakers that he stole from Roman Reigns. I don't know. I just think that name is awful. The Shulafala. I don't know. To me, it just sounds awful. Bronson Reed ended up saying that he got famous by destroying Seth Rollins. He ended up saying that he earned Rollins' respect so much that he was invited into the Vision. Bronson Reed ended up saying that he doesn't respect Roman Reigns and that he has punked Reigns out twice. That was, of course, in him stealing Roman's shoes. He ended up saying that the only reason it hasn't happened a third time is that Reigns hasn't manned up to him for a third time. So Bronson ended up saying that when Roman does, he will add to his collection. He ended up saying that he'll keep doing it until Reigns acknowledges his tribal chief. So Reed then ended up shouting, "Tsunami." So pretty much that was that. But, good promo from Bronson Reed here. And then we had Iyo Sky. Iyo Sky was walking backstage, by the tunnel by gorilla position. So Asuka and Kairi Sane, the Kabuki Warriors, offer to be in Iyo's corner to keep things, good, to keep things fair. So Iyo declined the Kabuki Warriors and them want to be in her corner. Iyo was like, "Oh, I got this." So the Kabuki Warriors and Iyo end up hugging, and there was almost a little Damage Control reunion there. So that was, pretty cool to see. And then as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had Iyo Sky versus Roxanne Perez. Of course, Roxanne Perez was accompanied by Raquel Rodriguez. This was originally supposed to be Iyo versus Naomi for the Women's World Championship, but of course, Naomi was not cleared to compete. But this was a good match here. So the match got underway. Both Iyo and Roxanne end up locking up. Iyo ended up powering Roxanne against the ropes, but Perez ended up turning Iyo around. Perez ended up going for a right hand to Iyo, but Iyo ducked it. Iyo ended up applying a waistlock. Perez got out of the waistlock and ended up wrenching Iyo's arm. Iyo ended up fighting back and wrenched Perez's arm. Perez rolled through and wrenched Iyo's arm again. She ended up bringing Iyo to her knees. Perez ended up applying a grapevine to Iyo's midsection and ended up turning Iyo over twice to go for the cover, to which Iyo ended up kicking out both times. Iyo then ended up pushing back to pin Perez's shoulders down to the canvas. So Perez ended up kicking out. Perez then ended up hitting a headlock takeover, and she ended up going for the cover, to which Iyo kicked out. Iyo ended up applying a head scissor, and she ended up kitching in the head scissor onto Perez, but Perez ended up bridging out. She got to her feet. She then shoved Iyo, so Iyo ended up taking Perez down and apply a side headlock. Iyo then ended up hitting a headlock takeover, but Perez ended up applying a head scissor. So Iyo ended up kicking away at Perez. Perez ducked the kick to the head from Iyo, and she ended up rolling Iyo up, to which Iyo ended up kicking out. You had Raquel Rodriguez ended up checking on Roxanne Perez as Iyo ended up drop kicking Perez out of the ring. So this led to Iyo ended up hitting both Perez and Rodriguez with a suicide dive. Perez ended up managing to avoid, big impact from the suicide dive, and she ended up attacking Iyo, sending Iyo into the steel steps. So then, as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, Perez ended up taking Iyo down. She ended up putting Iyo on the ropes, and she ended up hitting a running uppercut to the back of Iyo's neck. Perez then ended up hitting a double jump springboard moonsault to Iyo. She ended up going for the cover, and Iyo ended up kicking out. You had Iyo end up delivering the bullet train to Perez, so she ended up going for the cover, and Perez ended up kicking out. So later on, Iyo ended up sizing Perez up again for another bullet train attack, but Perez ended up moving out of the way. Raquel was then asking the ref for a timeout for Perez, but Iyo wasn't having any of it. Iyo ended up dragging Perez into the ring. Perez was shown pulling on the apron into the ring. So the ref ended up going to put the apron back, and Perez used the distraction to rake Iyo's eyes. So Perez then ended up hitting the Shining Wizard. She ended up going for the cover, and Iyo ended up kicking out. So we had Iyo ended up pushing back for a pin on Perez, but Perez ended up sliding Iyo off. She ended up going for the cover, to which Iyo ended up kicking out. So we had Iyo end up jumping over an attack from Raquel Rodriguez, and she started kicking away at Raquel. Iyo then ended up hitting both Raquel and Perez with a side moonsault. Iyo ended up getting Perez in the ring. She headed to the top rope. Iyo ended up going for over the moonsault, but Perez got her knees up. So Iyo ended up coming up short, and she landed with her shins on Perez's chest. So Iyo ended up botching that. So Raquel Rodriguez got on the apron. She distracted the ref. Perez ended up going to take the top turnbuckle pad off, but this led to the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, running down to stop Perez. So Asuka and Kairi Sane ended up pulling Perez up for Iyo to, take Perez down. So Iyo ended up charging. Perez moved out of the way, and Iyo put the brakes on from, taking out Asuka and Kairi Sane. But that did not do anything, because Perez ended up pushing Iyo into Asuka and Kairi Sane, and this led to Perez rolling Iyo up. She got a handful of tights, and so there you go. Roxanne Perez ended up winning the match. Post-match, the Kabuki Warriors were not pleased with Iyo, as Iyo tried to explain herself to them about what happened, and the Kabuki Warriors wanted nothing with Iyo. So pretty much that was basically that. Overall, good match this was between Roxanne Perez and Iyo Sky, and this is possibly leading to maybe the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, turning heel, which that would be pretty good. I would like to see Asuka and Kairi Sane go heel. So that's what this looked like here at the end of this. And then we saw Jackie Redmond. Jackie Redmond was backstage with Mr. Yeet, main event Jey Uso, who missed Raw last week, which a lot of people were disappointed in that Jey wasn't there in Brooklyn last week. And Jey ended up saying that receipts are coming, and he was handling family business. So LA Knight walked up to Jey. He ended up saying that the line starts behind him. So Knight insinuates that Jey missed Raw last week on purpose. So Jey ended up telling Knight that he'll send him to the back of the line. Yeet! So pretty much that was basically that. And then as Monday Night Raw came back from the commercial, we had Iyo Sky and the Kabuki Warriors. They were backstage very upset at the outcome of what happened during the match. Iyo ended up saying that they didn't help her because she lost. So Asuka ended up shoving Iyo and walked off. So Kairi Sane looked a little, torn. And she ended up running after Asuka. And pretty much that was basically that. So like I said, possibly leading up to Asuka and Kairi Sane turn heel on Iyo, maybe at some point. And then we had MAXXINE Dupri versus Becky Lynch. This was for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. Awful fucking match this was. We had MAXXINE Dupri being accompanied by Akira Tozawa and Natalya. I mean, did you all care for this match? I know I didn't. Becky Lynch ended up winning the match. Disarm her to MAXXINE Dupri, and Becky Lynch retains the Women's Intercontinental Championship. Post-match, we had Becky Lynch still talking trash to MAXXINE Dupri. Natalya ended up admonishing Becky. She ended up going to check on MAXXINE Dupri, and then Becky ended up kicking Natalya down, and pretty much that was basically that. Did you all care? If you said no, I applaud you. Awful fucking match this was. I mean, what did MAXXINE Dupri do to earn an opportunity at the Women's Intercontinental Championship? Oh, just because Becky was like, oh, I want to take on you in MAXXINE Dupri, as she said last week. And when that played last week, when I was there live, and when she was like, I want to face you in MAXXINE Dupri, I was like, literally, I was like that at my seat at the Barclays Center, watching that on the screen, and this was my reaction. Literally. And then we had Seth Rollins. What a coincidence. We go from Becky Lynch to her husband, Seth Rollins. Backstage with Paul Heyman, Bron Breakker, and Bronson Reed. The Vision's locker room. So Rollins ended up telling them that they are on top of the world. He ended up saying that he was expecting to come to this dump of a town to deal with his CM Punk problem. But it turns out that Punk has an LA Knight problem. Rollins ended up saying that Knight has a CM Punk problem. And now they have a Bron problem. Rollins ended up saying that he has no problems. And that tonight isn't about him. And it's about both Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed. Rollins was like to Breakker and Reed, boys, stack some bodies. I'm out of this dump. Rollins ended up saying that he'll head to the jet and get some Wi-Fi. So that was pretty much basically that. Seth Rollins, believing in Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker to take out Punk and Knight tonight. And then we had a promo from Bayley. Bayley ended up saying that she's not sure how she got here, and that she's been doing this for almost 13 years and has never felt this way. She ended up saying that she wants more, but feels less in a way. She ended up saying that she wants more and feels nothing. She ended up going to say that this is her fault. She ended up saying that in the process of her whole career, the role model felt like something before she called herself that. She ended up saying that she was one before she called herself that. Bayley ended up going to say that she thought she could change and help the division, being someone people in the locker room could look up to, or someone to look up to behind the barricade. She ended up saying now she's here by herself. Bayley ended up saying that she feels everything she's done has gotten her nowhere, and she's here with nothing to show, not a championship or a win in the last year. She ended up going to say that she can't remember the last time she felt proud of herself. So Bayley ended up saying that it's her fault. And in the end, we hear Bayley's laugh when she was a heel. So this is leading up to Bayley going back to being a heel. And I don't mind that. And then we saw Jackie Redmond. Jackie Redmond was backstage with Lyra Valkyria. Jackie Redmond ended up asking to Lyra what we saw from Bayley here in her promo, which I thought was a very good promo delivered by Bayley. So Lyra ended up saying that she hopes Bayley is okay. She ended up saying that Bayley cut her out, so she had no idea. She ended up saying that it can't be what she said to Bayley last week. Lyra ended up saying that she was right because Bayley cost her the Women's Intercontinental Championship. Because, after the match last week, Lyra has no choice but to go after the Women's Intercontinental Championship as long as Becky Lynch is the champion. So, Lyra ended up saying that Bayley is on her own. And pretty much that was that. And then we went to Iyo Sky. She was shown walking backstage, and Stephanie Vaquer came up to Iyo. Vaquer ended up saying that Iyo isn't the only one who was promised a title match. So Stephanie ended up walking off. So then Rhea Ripley came up to Iyo. Rhea got a big ovation there. Rhea ended up saying to Iyo that she was looking forward to Iyo getting the shot against Naomi. She ended up saying that if Asuka and Kairi had just listened to her, and Rhea was like, can she trust them? Can Iyo trust Asuka and Kairi? Iyo ended up saying that she doesn't appreciate what Rhea is trying to say. So Iyo warned Rhea to stay out of it. So Iyo ended up walking off, and pretty much that was basically that. And then we got word on what's taking place Friday on SmackDown. Well, Drew McIntyre will address his attack on Cody Rhodes. If you remember, this past Friday on SmackDown, Drew McIntyre ended up attacking Cody after the main event, and basically driving Cody through the front of the commentary table with a claymore. So again, that on SmackDown. And of course, Monday Night Raw next Monday, it will be in Philadelphia. So hopefully it's a good crowd there in Philly. Main event. LA Knight and CM Punk. They have taken on Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed. LA Knight and CM Punk, of course, WWE doing the whole can they coexist with Knight and Punk here. But pretty much the match ended in a disqualification because Seth Rollins ended up coming out and he ended up attacking Punk because Punk was going for the GTS to Bronson Reed. So LA Knight and CM Punk won the match by disqualification. And of course, this leads to how Monday Night Raw ends every week with the Vision, where Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed end up attacking, CM Punk, or whether it's Roman Reigns like we saw last week. It's the same old. Like I said, it's like we're living Groundhog Day at the end of Monday Night Raw every week with the Vision. So, the Vision took it to LA Knight and CM Punk. Jey Uso ended up coming out with a steel chair. Jey then came down the aisleway. He hit Braun Breaker with the steel chair in his ribs. He then smashed the chair on Breaker's back. Bronson Reed then challenged Jey to get into the ring. Jey then ducked an attack from Bronson Reed. Rollins rolled out of the ring before being attacked by Jey. Bronson Reed then swatted the steel chair out of Jey's hands. Jey then started punching away at Bronson Reed. He ended up hitting Bronson Reed in the back with the chair, which knocked Reed out of the ring. So Jey stood tall with both Punk and Knight in the ring. And this all led to Adam Pearce coming out. Pearce got on the mic. He ended up saying that it would be easy for him to come out here and call Rollins a liar who disrupts main events. Pearce ended up saying that he won't be angry, and we'll see this as an opportunity. So Pearce ended up saying that Rollins just earned a freaking opportunity to defend his freaking title at Clash in Paris. And he's going to defend it against Jey Uso, LA Knight, and CM Punk. It is a fatal four-way at Clash in Paris for the World Heavyweight Championship. So that's going to be your main event for Clash in Paris. So this led to Punk and Knight starting to argue. Punk and Knight ended up taking each other down, started punching away at each other. Jey then pulled Knight off. Knight elbowed Jey. Punk then ended up going for the GTS on Knight. But we had the Vision end up attacking them from behind. They ended up attacking Punk and Knight. Breaker ended up delivering the spear to Punk. They ended up sending Knight out of the ring. Rollins then stomped away at Punk. Breaker then got out of the ring and he ran around the ring. And of course, he delivered a spear to Knight at ringside. He annihilated LA Knight with that spear. Bronson Reed then picked Jey Uso up and he delivered the Death Valley Driver to Jey. Bronson Reed then ended up going up to the top, delivered the Tsunami to Jey. Breaker then put Knight in the ring. Rollins then ended up hitting Knight with the stomp. Rollins then sized Jey up and he hit Jey with a stomp. Breaker and Reed ended up holding Punk up. Punk was furious. He ended up saying that he'll kill Rollins. So Rollins then ended up saying, "Look in my eyes. What do you see?" The first lines in Punk's theme song for Cult of Personality. So Rollins ended up saying that Punk will never be the world champion. Rollins then delivered a stomp to Punk. He then held up the World Heavyweight Championship, and that was how Monday Night Raw went off the air. The Vision stand tall in the ring. But overall, Monday Night Raw, decent show was tonight. But anyway, that's it for the Monday Night Raw review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoy this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and be sure to join me tomorrow on my buddy Luke Ponto's channel, as always, as we bring you another episode of the Movie Fanatic. So, if you want your movie news, come over to my buddy Luke Ponto's channel at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be live for that. So until then, I'll see you all later.